Go.
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you. I call to order the Town of Hilton Head Island Finance and Administrative Committee of Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. Have we complied with Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir, we have.
Thank you. Krista, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Harkins?
Here.
Mr. Stanford?
Here.
Mr. Lennox?
Here.
All present, sir.
Thank you. We have the minutes of the regular meeting of September 20th, 2022. Are there any recommended changes, additions, or deletions?
Move adoption as written.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Minutes are approved. Krista, do we have any appearance by citizens?
Yes, sir, we have one citizen who signed up to speak today, and that is Mr. Skip Hoagland.
Mr. Hoagland.
Before the clock starts, I'd like to pass out some information, if you don't mind. Alex, this first sheet is for you, and you stabbed the white community and the black community in the back, and the sign on your family's property on 278. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Now, Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor, you're not in FOIA compliance. Mr. Lennox, can you answer the following questions for me, South Carolina investigators, in your future depositions and lawsuits? Why have you allowed the Chamber and Ariana Pernice and Ray Deal to present fraudulent Chamber industry performance metrics in order to help Bill Miles keep stealing ATAX money? Why did you scheme and allow the drafting of the illegal Chamber DMO contract with crooked town lawyers Curtis Coltrane, Terry Finger, Chamber lawyers Walter Nestor and David Tiggis to keep allowing Bill Miles to keep illegally stealing millions of ATAX funds as his secret sauce with no full accounting? You, McCann and Harkins, claim you went to the Chamber offices to see the accounting and receipts for ATAC expenditures. It was a lie. You committed criminal fraud. You did this. You said you did this in an hour inspection. It's impossible. It wouldn't even take a month. It'd take a month. It's just outrageous. Mr. Lennox, if ATAX funds paid for the DMO app and website with over $1 million taken to Canada, how is it possible Bill Miles can claim he owns the DMO communication media products? What happens to the DMO app and website when a new DMO is hired under procurement? You don't really think this is going to continue, do you? Under ATAX laws and South Carolina constitutional laws, you think the DMO contract you signed for 5 years with Bill Miles with no accounting provisions is illegal and valid. Fact is, you knew it was illegal, as well as the crooked lawyers Finger and Coltrane who schemed this. Fact is, you can't issue ATAX funds to be illegally used by Bill Miles for his $500,000 annual pay package that does not benefit tourism or the public good, reason, or use. It's constitutionally illegal. The Chamber and Bill Miles can't use ATAX funds for private profit and pay no IRS 501-C6 nonprofit UBIT taxes from their advertising sales. Mr. Ames, you can't be this stupid to allow this. Mr. Lennox is a lost cause. I understand why he does it. ATAX laws state ATAX funds issued to a DMO must only be used by the hired DMO to promote and market the destination only. Where does it say that a hired DMO can be a hired nonprofit chamber CBB and worse, can upsell advertising in a DMO app and website and pocket all the profits in complete violation of tax codes? Mr. Lennox, you are a fraud. This is a tax heist, and it will end. I look forward to watching this unfold with the media coverage, lawsuits, depositions, and discovery, especially the handcuffs and arrests. And Ray Deal is going to go to prison. That fella right there, that CPA, is an embezzling fraud.
Krista, do we have any other citizens?
No, sir, that concludes appearance by citizens.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We have 3 new business agenda items. The first is the consideration of a resolution of the Town of Hilton Head Island approving the use of Good Neighbor funds from the American Rescue Plan Act for Beaufort County toward the town's participation in the Regional Housing Trust Fund. Mr. Troyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Beaufort County, as part of the stimulus funding, the ARPA funding, has dedicated some of the county money toward municipalities. Our share, should we choose to take it, is $500,000. And so staff would recommend that we would let Beaufort County know that we will, in fact, take our share of the $500,000. We thought it would be a good idea as our initial investment into the Regional Housing Trust Fund. We think it would be a good idea for seed money for our brand new Community Development Corporation, but we don't have a budget quite yet, but we think it would be good to dedicate some funding from this to this, and then the balance would be for workforce housing. There's no budget, there's no plan yet, but that could be developed. But we would recommend to accept the funds and set these aside for these purposes.
Any questions from committee of John?
We're not in the business of turning down $500,000, which can serve the best interests of the town. Thank you.
Before we open it up for questions and comments from the community, I would entertain a motion to approve the acceptance of funds forwarded to the town from the county and to agree to use the funds as directed for other ARPA funding, to include the initial participation in the Regional Housing Trust Fund.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion among council?
Are we excluding the last part of the business item there?
No, I think that should be included as well. Krista, the motion will include initial participation in Regional Housing Trust Fund and workforce housing purposes.
Yes, sir.
I have a
It
comment.
also speaks to the Community Development Corporation in that. Councilman. Just to make sure we're all inclusive in what the staff has recommended.
If you don't mind.
Yes.
Krista, the motion will include the CDC, operating funding, and workforce housing, to include the initial funding for the Regional Housing Trust Fund. Comments from the community? Mr. Hoagland.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt you there. I just want to make a statement, and I want to make sure that y'all understand this. You've been sued. I financed the lawsuit against you for the $2 million to Sea Pines Plantation for the dredging of Harbortown and other usage of public monies for private purposes behind a gated community that the public does not have access to. You're going to lose that lawsuit because the Supreme Court ruled that you can't use, it's unconstitutional to use public funds for private purposes. If the public does not have access, free access and use to any facility, the HOA, the homeowners, whoever it is, has to pay for that. Taxpayers don't pay for that. Tax funds have to be used by the Chamber of Commerce and other people for and funded by their owners, by their members, by their donors. That's not what public monies are for. Be sure you understand, to be clear, public funds cannot be used for private purposes. It's not for the public good, the use, and the benefit, and the reason. And the Supreme Court ruled on that, and we hired one of the leading constitutional expert lawyers in the state in Greenville. He's not local. He's from Greenville, and he's filed over 100 lawsuits. Now, I just want to make that clear. And I have a comment on the next one as well. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment as it pertains to this agenda item? If there are none, I'll bring it back to the dais. Any other comments from the committee?
This would be a recommendation to council to adopt this resolution, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is clearly a very worthwhile cause. It's very needed, and it's a very tangible expression of our commitment to do something for workforce housing.
Krista, please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, for a point of order, could you please repeat who made the initial motion and the second? I did not document that.
Bill Harkins made the motion.
I
Got
believe I
it?
seconded.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. For the roll, Mr. Brown?
Support.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Lennox?
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Thank you. The second agenda item under new business is a presentation of the Hilton Head Island Visitor and Convention Bureau Annual Report, the Independent Accountant's Report on applying agreed-upon procedures. Two separate reports. Mr. Ray Deal.
Thank you, Ray.
This is what we have up here already.
Okay, for the record, Ray Deal, Controller at the Hilton Head Island Bluffton Chamber of Commerce. On a personal note, I can't tell you how much I enjoy coming to these meetings. They're just fantastic, especially kicks my day off perfectly. This document is the DMO contract that was signed with the town in October of 2020. Page 6 very clearly has specific accounting provisions. In addition to the audit, which I just handed you, there is something called the agreed upon procedures, which basically looks at the DMO tax dollar spend. The thresholds are 100% of the items over $10,000, 55% of the items between $5,000 and $10,000, and 5% of the items under $5,000. In this case, this past year, there were a total number of journal entry items of 590, and 130 of them were looked at. That is 22% of the total transactions. However, from a percentage of spend, it was 83%. 83% of the town of Hilton Head tax dollars were looked at. So in addition to the overall organizational audit that was performed by Holland, Bromley, Barnhill, and Brett, which is a firm out of Savannah that we've been only using for 2 years. So they were brand new auditors 2 years ago. In addition to the overall audit of the organization, we do the basically what's a second audit for the town of ATAX. And the net of everything is a completely clean audit. There were no adjusting entries, and it was a perfectly clean audit. So where there have been accusations of no accounting provisions and fraud and embezzlement and all these other ridiculous claims, I can tell you with 100% certainty, and so can the auditors, that none of that is true. So I'm submitting those documents to you today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Keep in mind that you do, and just so the public knows this, the town of Hilton Head has inspection rights. So now that the audit is over, if you wish to see every single transaction, you're more than welcome to it. Any questions?
Krista, for the record, Mr. Deal gave the committee the September 22nd Independent Accountant's Report on applying agreed-upon procedures and the audit effective the year end June 30th, 2022. Questions or comments of the committee?
Ray, when you summarize all of the review, what is the level of confidence that this is accurate?
100.
Thank you.
For the committee's benefit, I want to offer some background to the agreed-upon procedures report. As you recall, in negotiating the new 5-year contract approximately 2.5 years ago, we engaged an accountant with 30 years, Arthur Anderson, experience, and he served as a partner, and he was the national director of its forensic accounting practice. Through discussions with Mr. Borghese, it was recommended that we do this agreed upon procedures report where we test certain of the invoices. And it was agreed upon 65% of every invoice over 10,000.
55%.
55% over 10,000.
Oh, no, excuse me, 100% over 10,000, excuse me. 100% over 10,000.
55%
Yes.
between 5 and 10.
That's correct.
And 5% under 5,000.
Correct.
And as a result of that testing, 83% of the ATAX funding that went to the DMO was tested, and 100% of that testing was fully compliant with not only the agreement between the town and the DMO, but with the South Carolina code.
That's
I
correct.
asked Mr. Borghese, subsequent to this testing, what 83% means, and he says 83% is statistically meaningful, significant, and should give the user, i.e. the town, a high level of confidence. And I think that it does.
Great.
I would direct the committee's attention to pages 13, 14, and 15 in the audit, which show the full accounting of ATAX revenue and ATAX expenses, as well as the full report upon agreed-upon procedures.
I had a couple comments, Mr. Chair, if I could. Thank you. Mr. Deal, thank you for being here. We appreciate the partnership with the Chamber and the good work that's being done. We continue to improve upon our relationship, particularly with the 5-year contract in place. The letter here from the firm dates September 22nd, 2022. Is that when the audit was completed?
The audit was done in August, the third week of August. It was presented to the Finance Committee the second or third week of September, and then approved by our board. September 26th, I believe, was the date. So the board heard the presentation from the auditors, and actually Mr. Lennox was in the crowd because he was there for a different reason. So he actually heard the auditor's presentation.
Okay. Again, I appreciate the the procedures and us having this in the process. I just ask that in the future, we get this in advance of the meeting so that we have time to digest it and then have qualified questions for you along the way.
Yes, sir.
So we're not taking any action on this today, correct? We're just accepting it as information?
I will report to council this afternoon that we have received the reports and make any comments that you think is appropriate from the committee.
Okay. I didn't have enough time on the dais here to go through it, of course, so I'd ask that if we have questions,
Sure.
we can invite Mr. Deal back
We can.
for discussion at a later date. Okay, thank you.
And as I said before, the town has inspection rights. You know, if you wish to come to the chamber, we can look at every single invoice that we had, all 590 of them, all 590 transactions over the year. If you want to look at every single one, you're more than welcome to it.
And has the town used those inspection rights in the past?
Yes, they have.
Frequently?
Yes.
I agree with Alex's comment. It's really not possible for us to comment on this report, having just received it. So we'll see if we have questions coming out of the study, and we'll invite you back as necessary. Thank you, Ray.
Sounds great. Thanks.
So no action is being taken. Krista?
No, sir, there is no action on this item today.
No, I have a comment, please, on that agenda item. I have comments on all agenda items, or let's say most. First of all, what you just received is fraud. It's a lie. And I'm gonna help educate y'all once again. And Banker Lennox, you should understand this, and I know you don't understand it, but you're so corrupt, you're gonna keep doing exactly what you're doing. An internal hired audit under GAS accounting principles, general accepted accounting standards. We know about that, right? Mr. Lennox, you know about all that kind of audits, right? Well, let me tell you about that kind of audit.
Not as you
That kind of audit that the town hires and the chamber shows all of us only shows the numbers that the insiders and the people that are doing these financials want us to see. There's only one way that this is going to work and what you've got today. And that is if Ray Deal and the town agrees to a forensic audit. If you do not do a forensic audit and you do not agree to a forensic audit, I assume that state authorities are going to force you to do a forensic audit like they did in Palm Beach, Florida. And I have that Palm Beach audit. It's about that thick. And so when you and Harkins, Mr. Lennox, and John McCann go to the chamber offices and ask Bill Miles and Ray Deal to put out some receipts and invoices on the table, an inspection for 1 hour, my forensic auditor who works for me and my nonprofit expert says it's impossible. That would it'd take months to do a forensic audit. And a forensic audit, unlike a hired internal audit that the town and the chamber does, is twice as expensive. Same with the school district, but it's worth it because we're talking about a lot of money on the line. We're talking a lot about a fraud, a lot of embezzlement. We're talking about laundering. We're talking about all kinds of stuff. We're talking about violations to procurement laws, IRS tax laws, unconstitutional use of laws. So Ray Deal is going to have to answer several things. He's using these tax monies to take over $1 million to Canada to develop an app and a website. Well, the app is a complete failure. That was an overcharge, $100,000 overcharge. It should have only cost about $10,000 or $15,000. And by the way, I'm in the business. You know, technology was my company. That's how I retired. So Ray Deal's got to show us how all the advertising monies that were upsold on the DMO app and website, the violations to IRS UBIT and 501-C6 tax codes, and you're going to have to do a forensic audit. And that's not going to be a forensic audit done by one of your committees, Mr. Lennox. It's going to be a totally independent audit, maybe done by the Treasury, by Turk, by IRS, by SLED. Somebody's going to do it, but it's not going to be you, okay? So you guys think about this. And when you're finally get into a deposition, you're asked questions, be very careful what you say.
Committee, our third agenda item is the Town of Hilton Head Island Financial Report and an update from John Troyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here's our monthly update for the 3 months ending September 30th. Again, this is the town continues to monitor revenues, to continue to control expenditures, and adjust where we need to. The early conclusions, this is early in the year, and so some of our percentages and differences seem greater than they are, and as we go, we expect them to moderate. And then the other takeaway is that this is on track with our budget and on track with our expectations, and so this is right where we would expect to be. Again, Town Council, we always appreciate Town Council's actions to build reserves, diversify the revenue streams, and invest in the island. All three of those things have served the island very well. September preliminary results, and I put an asterisk by here just to emphasize that I'm trying to make this as timely as I can. And when you get our September results and the usual monthly financial statements, there might be some differences, there will be some differences. I pull this information and make this as timely as I can, and then we're still working in the finance department. There might be a few transactions in between when I make this report and when the monthly report is, but there's generally not too much. But if you ever look at this and say, well, how come this is different than that, certainly ask me, but then know that it's we have some late entries, and we try to make the monthly even more complete than what this information is. So when I put this together, this was the most complete and up-to-date information we had, but it may not be the last. General fund, you can see if just looking at September, we did better than last year. If you look at comparison, 2 years ago, 2021 had an anomaly. In September, 2022 had an anomaly in August. Outside of that, then we are pleased with September's results on the collection side. Year to date, 2023, 2022 and 2021 both had positive anomalies from state collections of business license revenues, and so that kind of made it outlier, especially this early in the year. They really made a difference. But if you compare 2023 with the yellow and the purple, and that would be 2020 and 2019, still significant growth. So we're good. This chart emphasizes we're through with the first 3 months, and we've got a long way to go. 2022 as a record year. We hope that we keep up with that. And so our budget for the general fund is $48.6 million. We're comfortable with those projections. And yeah, we'll have to definitely keep an eye on it. You can see September's numbers, and then the projections certainly go up from here. So you can see December through March, the property taxes and the influence the property tax collections have. And so looking backwards, just a little for the record, these are the ones that we like to look at each month, or the ones I like to present each month. And 2022 was an exceptional year, and you can look at of these revenues that we look at each month to try to get our fingers on the pulse of the economy. All of them but one were number one all-time best, and the real estate transfer fee was the second best all-time. And so 2022 was an exceptional year.
John, and I think it's important to say that because 22 was exceptional, we did not build the 23 budget based upon 22.
That's exactly right. No, we did not, and so we're not expecting those exceptional results in order to fulfill the budget. That's correct. And so we expect, we don't have a crystal ball, and so we're not counting on exceptional results. I think we're counting on good results. But we had exceptional results, and we can take a moment and pause and enjoy that moment. But then there's a new year, and we have to make sure that we make budget. And so we're 3 months in, and I feel comfortable we'll make budget. And so if you look at an exceptional year, we've had a one-time. You can look at the business license collections. It was about $1.4 million, almost $1.5 million. That was a one-time payment from the state last year that makes this year seem lower. But if you take that away, then we're doing fine. And so this is all very early. We know real estate transfer fee. We'll talk more about that in more detail later.
John, I would like to have an explanation on the variance in the TIF funds. Is that because the TIF is winding down?
No, it's just because, and if you look at the note that I've put, we've only collected 1% of what we expect this year. And so when we collect the other 99%, I think we'll exceed last year's. And so the TIF is working. It's working very well. It's working exactly like it should. But because we're so early in the year and the TIF collections are tied to the property tax collections, we'll see that in December through March, and the meaningful numbers on the TIF will be in March.
But we see in the previous 2 years for the same year-to-date number, big variance, and that's the reason for my question.
Yeah.
And is it? Can you explain it?
No, I think we just know that it's. We'll keep an eye on that. And so what happens, the kind of collections that are emphasized in this part of the year are how many of them are delinquent. And so if there's less delinquent property tax collections, then our year-to-date up until September is going to be less compared, because the new tax bills aren't out yet. The new tax bills we expect to be out somewhere around November the 1st, and that's when we'll get the new property taxes. And so what you're seeing is two pieces of that. You're seeing the automobile, the piece of your property taxes that go with your automobiles, and delinquent collections. And so delinquent collections are very unpredictable. They go up and down, and it's fully expected just because it depends on individual properties for that particular year.
We'll count on you to bring it back to budget. Thank you.
I don't have any concerns. I looked at the number too, and it's like, wow, it's 75% down, but, whoa, wait, we're only 1% into this, 99% to go. We're going to be fine. Interestingly, if you look at the H-tax, we had a record year last year, and yet we're 2.4% better than last year. Beach preservation fee, we had a record year, and we're still 2.2% better than last year. Electric franchise fee was a little off last year, and some of that is weather-related, and some of that is just usage-related, and we're doing better than last year, but last year was an off year for the electric franchise fee. So, yeah, and if you look at the property taxes general fund, we're down 5.9%, but we've got 98.5% to go. And so the story is yet to be told. The vast majority of the story is yet to be told. If you look at collectively, for all these revenues together, we've collected $7 million out of $99 million last year, and so that's 7%, 93% to go. And so there's most of the story is yet to be told.
John, as far as the, I guess the H-tax, I guess all of the fees that are necessarily associated with, I guess the point of sale. Is there any way, I'm not asking you to answer this question today, I'm just thinking down the road. Is there any way to relate those either increases or decreases to transaction versus price point? Because we're taking a percentage of the price point to develop the tax, right? So as we've seen inflation and we've seen cost of, say, room per night continue to creep on us, we would assume that, of course, this number is going to continue to go up. So it's hard to determine if it's that we're making more transactions or we're just charging more per transaction. Just for future thought as we develop reports, I think that's important for us to understand.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, and I think that's something that we should consider as we move through the year and contemplate that as part of our discussion of how we're doing and how much of that is inflation related and how much is it due to activity on the island, and the very key points.
There is definitely an inflation factor in those numbers. Mm-hmm. And during those 3 months, average inflation rates nationwide were over 8%. So if you wanted to do a quick calculation, you could divide that by 108 and come up with a real increase versus the inflated increase. Okay.
So yeah, this just emphasizes that we've got a long way to go. Property taxes, the point of this slide is we're only 1.5% collected. If you look at the natural disaster fund, it won't be zero this year because there's still some delinquent tax collections when we did have that 5 mils for the natural disaster, and so there'll be a little bit this year, but very little. And no new property taxes for the natural disaster fund. And so as that 5 mils went away, then that will dwindle down to zero, but not quite zero this year.
What is our natural disaster fund at this point? Round numbers.
It's over $30 million. And so we'll get you some more detailed information next time.
Good, thank you.
But property taxes, you can kind of just see a chart. Here's when the property taxes are expected here's when they have happened the last 4 years. Real estate transfer fee. I think this is a good point of conversation. 2023 in the blue, not quite as good as the record year in 2022. It's comparable to the 2021, and it's better than 2020. So you have kind of a mixed bag here. And how does that look year to date? And I think if you look at September on real estate transfer fee, this might be kind of a little bit of what we might see economically on the island is that we had 2 exceptional years in 2021 and 2022, and it might be that 2023 is more normal. If you just look at the September columns, 2023, if you didn't look at 2022 and 2021, it would look really impressive compared to 2020. But we had 2 exceptional years, and it seems less. And so I think we may see more of that, but I think that's something that we should keep an eye on. But are we going to have a more normal year? That's what I think at least we're leading toward.
Do we have a balance on the real estate transfer fee account? John, if you don't have it, maybe in the next report you.
It'll be in the
provide-
next report.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have that one committed to memory, but it's there hasn't been a lot of uses toward it, and so most of the collections are going toward the fund balance. Just a little bit of a different mix if you wanted to see. Last year and this year for business license revenues, we did a shift on the rates to comply with the with the model ordinance, and so that changed our shift just a little bit. And part of it is just the change in economy, and you can look at 2022, the real estate went up significantly, and it's reflected in those. Business licenses, it's still early. On the local side, you can see we're doing better than the last couple of years locally on the local business license collections. But if you look at the state collections, you have an anomaly in 2022, the blue, in August, and 2021 in September. And so you take away those anomalies, and it's still early, and we won't know much until toward the end of the year. And so that's a piece of it.
This is the first full year of single property,
Yes.
short-term rental owners paying a business license.
That's correct, yes. And so that helps us locally. It does.
And does that fall under the accommodations real estate percentage on page 17?
Yes.
Okay. This slide's gonna make a lot more sense, and also number 18, when we get into the higher collection months, of course, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around, what this is gonna look like. But I like what you've done so far, with, giving us a breakdown as far as the different industries. I'm a little interested in what all other businesses is, because it accounts for such a big part of the pie. And I was just curious, are those percentages mainly a lot lower than what you provided us detailing?
We can delve into that a little bit more. And so that's, we just tried to be helpful categories, and
Sure.
and that's all. And
How many different business classifications do you have?
8. And so, and it's not necessarily, and so that's a piece of the model business ordinance, is that they made us change a number of businesses from our 8 to their 8. And actually we had more than 8, and so our number was more than that, down to their 8. And so we have a different mix of different classifications.
So maybe when we get to the higher collection months, John, if you could detail all 8 of them, that'd be a lot more clear for us.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that. So, the state collections and business license, you can see that it's going to come at the end of the year, and so we can plan and hope, but we won't know. Spending, if you look at our budget at $48 million, you can see that July, August, and September are all under $4 million per month. But know that June is when we convert back to full accrual, and so June will just, with the timing of it, spending the timing of how we calculate, will be a more expensive month. But it's right in line with our expectations. Also, I would point to, on this slide, August. If you look at August 2022, 2021, you can see that spending is down in August. And I think what we can talk about that is really kind of a hesitation with COVID. How fast, how much are we going to implement? And there was a very purposeful pause, and you can see it in the numbers, which were later more implemented fully. And so I think you just kind of see, how did we start the year? We started the year with a pause just to make sure that COVID, our response to COVID was appropriate. And so that's a little bit of just conservatism before we got too far into the year.
Those general fund expenditures are up at least partially because of the CIP expenditures that we're experiencing right now.
Yes. General fund, and so year to date, we're above previous years. Again, we're at $48 million budget, and so if you did that evenly, then our spending would be $12 million for 3 months, and so we're under that. And so we're on track. We're on track for where we should be at this time of the budget year. Here's some numbers. You can see there's kind of a different mix. We've had some movement of people, and so that kind of affects our percentages. And I expect, and it has already, this moderated from last month, and October will moderate more than this. And so I don't expect that 9.8 to be that high later. How are we doing to the budget? And so here's our year-to-date spending of $10.5 million compared to the 48.6 budget. And so we're 21% through 25% of the year. So comfortably where we should be. Last year, our numbers, I think it's good to know, and to Mr. Chairman's point, is that last year's collections for the general fund were $47 million. We budgeted for the new year $48 million, and so that's not expecting a grand year, but a good year. Our monthly, this is the time of year when we spend out of our reserves temporarily until our property taxes come in, and so this is about where we would expect to be. Year to date, I think you can, if you look at September, it also shows, I think it may be a trend. It'll be interesting to watch, but 2022 and 2021 as exceptionally good, and then 2023 is more normal like the previous 2 years. And so that's my read on this, is that this year is more of a normal year than the last two. And this chart would show that as also. This is just a linear version of the same thing. And so I think it does help, though, to just show the groupings and the directions. We use a little bit of our fund balance at the start of the year, and that will turn around as property taxes are collected. Debt service, 25% of the year, and we spent 22.5% of our budget. And so everything's on track. We haven't issued any new debt. We don't plan to issue any new debt. And so this one is pretty straightforward.
John, it would be useful to periodically, maybe on a quarterly basis, let us know how the balances of the bonding is from time to time. We have a series of bonds. We're getting down to, we're paying them down. Having some reporting on that would be useful.
Yeah, that would be good. And I think it's really encouraging how much, if you look at the mix of principal and interest, and so much of our payments are principal, and that's very encouraging for the town. So we'll include that in future reports. And you can see here, the principal paid, the schedule is $16.7 million on principal this year, and then we'll have some statistics on that. Stormwater, still early. Stormwater revenue collections are much like the property tax collection schedule, and so this is just a small percentage of the year. And so we expect that we needed to draw from the stormwater reserves to start the year, and that will turn around in January. CIP, we've talked about these, and again, I would lead you back to our website. There's a lot of good information about the individual projects and updates on those projects. And so, beach fee. Here's another interesting story. August 2023 was better than the last 3 years. September, not quite as good as last year. And so we got a little bit of mix, but better than the two previous. And so if you look at year-to-date beach fee, we're still better than the last 3 years, and so better than our record year last year, but just barely. And so it'll be interesting. October, many of our businesses report quarterly, and so October will be a key month. But it's not as ahead of last year as it was last month. Hospitality, a little bit more. August, we beat the previous 3 years. September didn't quite beat last year. And so you're seeing just a little bit of softening there. But it's still better than last year to date. And so year to date, the blue is still the highest number. We hope that continues. We'll see. And this is going back to Mr. Chairman's comments, is that we had really two exceptional revenue years, 2021 and 2022. And by any measure, those are exceptional years. And then we're just going to have to keep a close eye on 2023. And so, yes, a shout out to our revenue services people who work very closely with our businesses and the hard work of collections. Here's our budget. This is, you've seen this, and so, 2023 revenue, I would consider it good, and operations are within budget. Capital plan is moving forward. We're reducing debt. We'll get you more statistics on that, and we're where we would expect to be. Looking ahead, we're working with our auditors. We should have our audit report here very soon, and so we'll have the printed version for the official record, and certainly that might be an opportunity for conversations as well when we start talking about that, because it'll give the official record of our fund balances in each fund, and I think good talking points too. Do we have any comments or questions?
John, I would ask the same question I do every month. Have you noticed any unfavorable trends?
Well, if we're comparing to last year, then I see our revenue is just trying a little bit softening there, but I wouldn't say it's a bad trend. It's just not as great as last year.
When plotted over a 5-year trend, it's consistent.
Yes.
How about unfavorable variances to budget?
No, we're on track. We don't anticipate any budgetary issues for council to consider. And so, and one thing that I'll put in future, we're working really hard on a couple of things. One, investing fully and taking advantage of this change in interest rates. And so we'll have some interest earnings that'll be a really good story from this fiscal year.
Okay. Comments of the committee?
I think, John, the question I think that Alex was probing at is an important one. And if we ask ourselves the question, are price increases masking volume decreases?
And I think that's
an important question.
That's a very real question, and I think we'll delve into that for future meetings. But our early look seems to indicate so.
Because with prices going up, then the appetite for Hilton Head may start to decrease from a volume standpoint.
Right.
And we could be diluting ourselves from a financial standpoint.
And you can see that change in interest rates, a raise in interest rates has a impact on a real estate transfer fee too. You're seeing that as well.
Good report. Thank you.
Hey, John, thanks for bringing us to this in advance. We understand the tolerance level. I think if you just lead with that, we'll accept it, okay? The only thing is, on some of the slides, the watermark is actually cutting off the wording.
I noticed that, and
Okay.
and we'll resend that. And so I saw that in the materials, and I apologize for that. And we'll make sure that you get clean copies.
Otherwise, good report. Thank you for the detail.
John, I appreciate the detailed report and your knowledgeable answers here. I feel very comfortable with this. This was a good report. Let's keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, I think
And thank you also for getting this report to us in advance.
And there's a little bit of the earlier I get it to you, then that it's a little bit less timely, but we'll get it to you so that you can read it and have some time to digest some of the materials. Yes.
John, when you consider what this economy has been through over the past 10 or 12 years, we've been through a great recession. We've been through back-to-back-to-back hurricanes. We are now hopefully at the tail end of a 2.5-year pandemic. And now we're introduced to increasing inflation, rising interest rates, and a decreased rate of growth. So I think you're experiencing all the black swans that you possibly can as a chief financial officer for a $100 million organization. So to the extent that you can budget accurately and stay on that budget, to the extent that you can take the anomalies out of the revenue side and the expense side in your forecasting, I think this will serve us well ongoing. So good job, and keep an eye on the trends.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any comment from the public?
What we just witnessed is another fraudulent presentation, just like the chamber. It's more reason to do a forensic audit with John Troyer overseeing $100 million, and I'll tell you why. Because nobody in this room has a clue what we just saw. Nobody has seen the accounting. Nobody's a CPA. Nobody has forensic audit background. Mr. Lennox, you're just so full of it. You just, it's unbelievable. Reagan principle, trust but verify. Show us the numbers. Nothing is going to change in this town until we have a forensic audit and an FBI investigation. That's how criminal and how serious it is. Never in the history of this country has a town, a county, a chamber, a school district ever been forensically audited, forced to a forensic audit, where waste and crimes was not discovered and prison most of the time. It's just outrageous that you people keep on believing all this stuff and let this guy run the numbers and let Josh Gruber, ethics violator, Mark Orlando, caught at illegally using tax monies while he was manager in Bluffton, just baton passed to take Steve Riley's place so the crimes and the criminal activity can continue. It's insane. Let me tell you something. A full power town manager and a weak part-time mayor doesn't work. Nothing part-time works. It's got to be full-time. You got to be a mayor, CEO. You've got to stop the town employees from ethics violations. You got to fire them, bring in new honest people. You got to clean house. It's the only way. We cannot go on any longer. I've been watching this for 40, however the town was first started, and it's just gotten worse. Steve Riley could not have been any more dishonest, and it's continuing, and we've got to stop it. So we need a forensic audit, and we need it now. These internal hired cookie cutter audits to hide numbers and only show us what they want us to see, no receipts, no invoices, no transparency, no accountability, no performance metrics. We're just totally out of control. And all of you are just part-time. Alan Perry, perfect example. No, I'm going to keep my full-time job. I'm going to let the town employees keep on running the show. You know, he doesn't have a clue. He doesn't care. He just wants to be a figurehead. We need a full-time mayor, CEO, pay him $250,000 a year versus paying Bill Miles of the chamber $500,000 a year with the use of our tax monies. Does that not make more sense to y'all? And Alex, you better look at Kim Likens and what she's done. You got a lot of soul searching to do.
Is there any other comment to be made to this committee? Mr. Ames.
Mr. Ames.
Thank you. It's my understanding that this is the last F&A meeting for the year. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. I think it's appropriate then for me to applaud you as a council committee. Over the last 6 years, I've seen F&A in many different configurations, but I think with John Troyer's assistance, Bill, your involvement, Tom, your leadership, we will sorely miss this F&A committee. I think the level of inquiry, the probing comments by Alex and Glenn as well, have made a significant difference in my confidence that this ship is being run responsibly. But I'd also like to give Mr. Chairman Tom some additional admiration, praise from my standpoint, because temperamentally, you're a very different person than I am. Fortunately, for the town finances, I think that your willingness to delve into the details of the finances has certainly educated me, but it's also given me a high degree of confidence that your probing questions are on the mark. So for many reasons, I think the town of Hilton Head Island will miss you. And I think I speak for the rest of council. We certainly appreciate your efforts over the last several years to lead F&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Lennox? Mr.
Thank you,
Lennox,
David.
may I interrupt just one second? We'd also like to piggyback on that and thank you for your leadership and guidance over the last several years as both a town council member and as the chairman for the finance committee. Your leadership has really taught us all a lot, and we really appreciate everything you've done for us.
You're very welcome. Thank you, and thank you for the support. Josh, Mac, John, and Krista. It certainly was a team effort and one I enjoyed being a part of. Any other business to come before the committee?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We stand adjourned.